The impact on news websites has been absolutely devastating. Traffic has dropped on the majority of websites by 30 to 80%.
It's a matter of not losing our love of the craft. If we start to rely on these tools too much, we will ultimately become less effective at what we do day to day.
Most journalists now, they don't have time to pick up the phone and have a little friendly chat. It's very difficult to get that one-on-one time.
Our exclusives need to be bringing that creativity, that thought, that imagination to stories that AI simply could never do.
The appetite for genuinely value-add journalism is still there because a lot of traffic has dipped on traditional media publishing websites. However, Substack has increased significantly.
Welcome to the WPR podcast, where we ask what's got the marketing and PR world talking. Every episode, we'll be exploring a different topic, from strategy to social media, stunts to GEO, but always linking back to the hot topics generating debate among our team and with our clients. The subject in our mind is the huge impact AI is having on UK news publishers. Is AI rewriting the rules of journalism and PR? And if so, is it for the better or worse? And how should we, as PR advisors and brand marketers, be responding? I'm talking to some colleagues with really interesting perspectives on this fast-moving topic, with Amy Brookbanks, our senior news director and a former Sun editor, reminding all PRs what a journalist inbox really looks like, with the mind-blowing image of returning from a holiday to 30,000 emails, and to content director Tom Went, reflecting on the importance of human creativity in crafting copywriting. Join us to hear how AI is shaking up newsrooms. Stick around, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. Today, I'm joined by Amy and Tom. Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Amy Brookbanks, the Senior News Director at WPR. I'm also the former TV and showbiz editor of The Sun, and I've worked in national newspapers and magazines for over 20 years.
And Tom?
Nice to follow up with that. So I'm Tom Went. I'm content director at WPR. So I mainly work on the B2B side of the business, producing thought leadership, white papers, reports, that kind of thing, research as well.
So today we are going to discuss the inevitable AI, because what else is everyone talking about at the moment? I think in my experience, all marketers want to understand how AI can drive efficiencies in their campaigns and outputs. And as an agency, we are constantly asked, how will we effectively use AI to support marketing objectives? So what is the role of AI in brand PR? There's a lot to unpick here, so let's start with a really broad question. Amy, what do journalists think of AI in general?
I think most journalists are quite terrified of AI, and there's that sort of reluctance to use it. They want to pretend it doesn't exist. Just go away. We don't need it. It's horrible. It's untrustworthy. It doesn't work. It's never accurate. So I don't think journalists love AI, but I think the smarter ones are beginning to realise that actually they can use it to their advantage.
I guess it's, to many journalists, I see it as a threat to their occupations. I think a lot of people in a lot of industries are thinking, will AI leave me out of a job? And do you think that's sort of influencing what journalists think of AI?
Yes, absolutely. I think when there was first talk of this AI thing coming about, it was very much, this is going to steal your jobs. All of these robots are going to come in and you won't have a job in 10 years' time. So when it was first introduced, I think that's what made journalists sort of think, well, I don't want it. We're not using it. It just needs to go away.
And I think they're not alone in that. I mean, you read the lawyers, accountants, apparently it's all going to be replaced by AI. So you can understand that kind of general fear. It's really early days, but what has been the impact of AI on news sites, on publishers overall?
So the impact on news websites has been absolutely devastating. Traffic has dropped on the majority of websites by 30 to 80%. So it's hugely impacted traffic and ad revenue.
80% is a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, huge. News websites have had to completely adapt their way of working. This is why you're seeing more journalists becoming content creators. It's why you're seeing more video than ever. And it's also why people are seeing more paywalls going back up and membership sites.
Yeah, and that's in the midst of a really tough environment for publishers anyway, because you had the likes of Meta restricting how many articles that we saw in our feeds from news sites as well. And that must have had a pretty catastrophic impact on publishers.
Yes, absolutely. I think the glory days are well and truly over, unfortunately. I mean, looking back 6-7 years ago, we were basking in, the best traffic ever to websites, thanks to Facebook, pushing articles into people's feeds and generating a whole new generation of readers, bigger audiences. And then all of a sudden, Facebook decided to pull the plug on that. And that had a devastating effect on traffic. And then along came AI mode swiftly after that, which has just torn apart, this amazing traffic to all of our favourite news websites.
Yeah, and like taking my PR hat off, as just somebody that does look at Facebook on a daily basis, I find it really annoying. Like if I said I want to hear news stories from my favourite publishers, it's because I want to. So it's frustrating as well from a user perspective that that's not seen. So I suppose that's a negative side of AI. In your experience, how are journalists embracing AI? Are they using AI for the creation of articles?
So I think now journalists are realising that actually they can use AI to their advantage if they're smart and clever about it. So I think the best way that journalists can use AI is for research purposes, transcribing, writing contracts, doing rotas. It's essentially able to do a lot of the admin tasks. So it can free up journalists to concentrate on exclusives and doing what they do best. And essentially that, I feel, is the only way that news publishers can survive in the future, is if they're doing something that AI can't do. So exclusive stories, appearing on camera, delivering the news, appearing as a trusted source.
Yeah, which I think again is across industry, isn't it? But I think the hope is that AI will take off the sort of the easier task for us and leave us to focus on the areas where we can add most.
I think the revenue model is a question that will obviously work itself out over time, but the appetite for genuinely value add journalism is still there, because a lot of traffic has dipped on traditional media publishing websites. However, Substack has increased significantly in that same period, which suggests, as Amy says, these journalists are now becoming brands themselves. And from a PR perspective, I suppose that does still give us opportunities to reach people that are reading these articles and obviously are influenced by them.
Yeah, that's a good point. So kind of bring it back to PR and marketing overall. If you as a journalist received a press release that you thought had been written by AI, because I think the clients can say, well, can AI do the easier press releases? If you'd received a press release that you thought had been written by AI, what would you do with it?
I probably wouldn't read it because I wouldn't believe that it was true or real. It would make me assume that the company didn't exist. It was one of those weird marketing emails, like a round robin thing. I would instantly just delete it.
And did you receive many that you thought, yeah?
Yes, yes,
interesting.
I did. Yes, we used to be inundated with press releases. They would come in so fast, we wouldn't be able to read them all. So in order to, instantly grab a journalist's attention, emails need to be from people that you trust. They need to be offering something exclusive or something absolutely fabulous in the subject head. So it's very obvious when you receive an AI written press release, because that it looks dull, it sounds bland. You can instantly tell by the tone. It's just not exciting. The appearance of these AI written press releases are all the same. They all use that double dash. They also are usually incorrect, because AI doesn't know everything. It's kind of taking, recent articles and things like that, but actually it doesn't know everything. So you tend to find it's not accurate.
And hopefully none of those releases were ever from us. Tom?
Possibly so.
No, never. No, I think that's a really interesting point. I think we'll come onto it a bit more later on, but the formulaic nature of AI content is obviously quite apparent. I think even with that time invested in improving a model, let's say, putting prompts into one of these bots that you've obviously tailored for a specific purpose, generally I say the outputs are not actually that great. And clients recognise that as well, which is obviously it's incumbent on us to make sure that we don't have these generic isms and schisms reaching our content.
Yeah. And I know that we as an agency are really clear on where you can and can't use AI, and certainly in content generation that's not okay. Amy, to what extent do you think journalists are checking the involvement of AI in the press releases they receive? Is it just gut feel, or are journalists increasingly using things like Zero, GPT, etc.?
Journalists don't use Zero GPT or anything like that. They don't need to. It's instantly recognisable when a press release isn't written by a human.
I've heard some trade journalists are there. That's what I've heard, a rumour. Have you ever heard?
Yes, yeah. I think it is becoming increasingly common, particularly with the automated side of AI comms as well. So I think we've seen quite a few things from Press Gazette where journalists on both sides of the sort of divide, B2C and B2B, are being inundated with these automated press releases written by AI, pitched by AI, thought out by AI, and it's obviously leading to editors to sort of take action, I suppose, and actually determine how much of these releases or this content is actually humanly written, and often it's not at all. So,
and I suppose once a journalist has seen a brand or an agency supply this kind of AI generated content, whether it's a covering email or the press release itself, they're going to kind of get a black mark against their name / be blacklisted. Would you say that's the case?
I think ultimately it depends who the agency is and what they're offering. I think if, say, a huge agency starts sending out AI written press releases, they might be forgiven, and somebody might have a quiet word with them. Well, actually, why are you using AI to write this? We don't feel like we can trust you. Is this real? Are you actually offering this? But if a journalist receives an AI written press release from an agency they don't know, from a PR they don't know, I just think that will be instantly deleted and blacklisted, and you'll probably be blocked. I think they receive so many emails all day, every day, that that block button is very it's very handy, actually. Yeah, I used to use it quite a lot.
And how many press releases were you receiving a day on average when you were the other side of the fence, so to speak?
I would probably get about 600 a day. If I went on a week or two holiday, I would probably come back to 30,000 emails. So you can imagine you can never read those emails.
Yeah, they're just never going to be opened.
They're never going to be opened or read. So I would come back from a holiday and be quickly scanning my inbox to read emails from people that I knew, which is why I think moving forward, the relationship between PRs and journalists now is more important than ever. You have to have that one-on-one contact. You have to have that real human, real life relationship.
Yeah, and does pick up the phone to journalists still work?
Yes, absolutely. It does work. I mean, most journalists now, they don't have time to pick up the phone and have a little friendly chat. It's very difficult to get that one-on-one time. It's very difficult to even get them out for free boozy lunches these days.
Well, there's just fewer journalists. So I suppose the journalists are just covering more jobs than they ever used to. And
yeah, absolutely.
With huge content pressures to feed algorithms, etc.
Well, that's the thing, journalists these days, they're not just writing articles, they're appearing on camera, they're doing podcasts, they're going on the radio, they're going on TV, they're appearing on the YouTube and their social channels. They're doing more work than ever before. So yeah, I think the PRs can really help a journalist these days. A real amazing PR with a great story is going to massively help a journalist. And so I think it's a shame when there's all these AI written press releases, because actually a real amazing PR with a great story will make a journalist's life so much easier.
I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? There's in some respects there is an opportunity as well, in that the companies or the PRs that are relying heavily on these tools that are being blacklisted obviously makes the better PRs stand out, right? And the better content stand out. So in some respect, there is an opportunity in the deluge. I know obviously maybe the journalists don't feel that way themselves, but for getting a brand or a story in front of people, the right people, there is something of an opening there, I think, given what's happened recently.
Mm-hmm. There was an occasion when a lot of the big publishers actually fell for one of these AI written press releases with a fake expert included. So a company generated this press release saying that they had a fake expert that used to work in Buckingham Palace and essentially made up all of this, royal insider gossip. Meghan Markle did this and Prince Charles did this and Prince Charles's favourite food is this. He used to eat it all the time. And all of these huge news outlets that we read every day published these stories from this fake expert that doesn't even exist. So I think falling for tricks like this has made them now stand up and make sure that they're paying attention to who is this story from, is this expert real? Have we spoken to this person on the phone ourselves? So everything now, needs to be verified, checked, double checked.
Yeah.
Just on the phone point as well. Sorry, Jay. I was just going to say it's interesting because I've seen on LinkedIn journalists insisting that they speak to people on the phone for quotes in particular, because so many of the quotes they receive via email now are obviously AI generated, which obviously suggests that these people are not experts at all. They don't have anything of value to add. So I think, as I say, in some respects, there is an opportunity to stand out, because if you're actually getting on the phone and being able to reach these people, you're going that one step beyond. You're making an effort, I guess. And
I think it's all a really interesting point, because we are living in an area where mistrust in the media is high for all kinds of relatively recent stories that we can think through. So it's like another pressure on journalists to be absolutely certain that what they're publishing is true and therefore isn't AI generated. So I've heard a lot from Amy, and a broad question for you now, Tom, as someone who sits very much the other side of the fence, whose job is entirely hinged around content creation, or nearly entirely. What are your views of AI, broadly speaking, the good and the bad?
So I generally say I take a cautious view. So I don't want to sound like a Luddite. There are obviously some real advantages for everyone using these tools, certainly in terms of like efficiencies. Obviously, agency side, we're all about time. So efficiencies are a huge sort of boon, I suppose. But on the other hand, I suppose these AI tools have baked in disadvantages, I would say, particularly in terms of content creation. And that's very much based on how they're developed and built, as I understand it. I wouldn't profess to know a great deal about that, but from what I've read, there are some inherent problems, and these aren't necessarily going to be solved anytime soon, or if at all. So, I take a cautious view.
So in your day-to-day life, what do you use AI for? What do your day-to-day work life? You haven't got to go into your personal life. So in your day-to-day work life, what do you use?
Well, it's interesting. So my partner, she absolutely loves ChatGPT and uses it pretty much for everything. But that's another question, I suppose. But in terms of agency side, it is a very, very useful research tool, particularly for those topics where you're trying to get up to speed, you're trying to understand something that maybe you're not necessarily in your specialism, I suppose. Like, it's a really useful tool in that respect. But for content generation, and I think obviously this is a piece that we've introduced recently at the agency, there's now effectively a blanket ban. Well, there is a blanket ban on content generation here, principally because of the problems that Amy described when dealing with the press, but also just because a lot of the content is really superficial.
Yeah, so it's a good research tool. And just out of interest of both of you, I notice with my children, if they want to find anything out, they will start with ChatGPT. I think I'm just too entrenched into Googling. I've been Googling for as long as I can remember.
Yes.
Where do you kind of start your searches? Has AI changed the way you begin your searches, or are you?
I am a bit addicted to ChatGPT now, because I have used it for research a few times, and I find it can spew up these incredible nuggets of information that if you then go and, double check and see it is real, oh, that's quite interesting. How did it find that out? So I do think it's really clever in some ways. But also, I find it really terrifying because I don't know if you've noticed, if you put something into Chat GPT about your personal life, maybe like, your child's name or how old they are or whatever, it remembers everything. So if you ask another question in 2 months' time, it then refers to the name of your child, where you live, how old they are. So it remembers all this personal information, and it does make me think, where is this being stored and how long have they got
That's a
it
good
for?
question.
Yes.
What are they going to use it for in the future?
Yeah, I think that, funnily enough, I think recently there was some discussion about caching and how ostensibly these tools are siloed. So if you put your personal data in and you've got a license agreement with one of these platforms, it's safe. However, there has been occasions where personal information has apparently bled over into other chats, which obviously presents a whole new dimension of problems, I suppose. But just on your point, Jane, I'm also a Google person.
It's hard to change these habits. They
but
become entrenched.
Yeah, but weirdly, I probably use for research, I suppose, and I guess this probably speaks to like the nature of what you're searching for at work and what you're maybe searching for at home. At work, I would probably input a question into a bot to get an answer because the results are typically more in depth. There's more intention behind my question, so therefore the results are going to be more accurate to what I'm looking for. But generally when I'm at home, it is Google. So maybe that will change. I don't know in the future, but there certainly does seem to be a generational divide on that.
I think a story I love, not all that long ago, ChatGPT was recruiting for a content writer on a very competitive salary.
Yes.
In a post that went semi-viral for obvious reasons. And what, if anything, do you think that tells us?
So I think competitive salary, first of all, was putting it lightly, at least if it's the one I saw, it was $400,000 for content strategist for OpenAI, which is a remarkable sum of money. I think for me, it speaks to the inherent problems with these models. So there are issues with hallucinations, so generating results regardless of their accuracy. When these results are then verified by the person that's asking the questions, they're often wrong. And I think it also speaks to the power of human written content as well. So I believe Google are also the same as OpenAI. They forbid the use of these tools for their own marketing and PR. So I think it kind of speaks for itself in some respects. There's obviously challenges with these tools that seemingly won't be solved anytime soon, and that's why some of the tech giants are opting for the old school way.
Yeah. And on a similar vein, in a borderline dystopian move, an Italian newspaper, I can't speak Italian, I'm not going to try, claimed to have published the world's first AI-generated edition. Did you see it? And were there any learnings from that? We're going to see more of this. What do you both think?
I just think it was a really ridiculous thing to do because you might as well just say, hey, take my job. Don't need it anymore. Don't even try it.
It's interesting. So I also can't speak Italian, so I can't speak for the quality of the content that was written there. But I think there were two things that stand out with that story. One, it was issued alongside the traditional print newspaper, so written by journalists, human journalists. So it says a lot about the quality, I suppose. They weren't willing to wholesale move over to an AI edition and see how it performed without issuing a traditional version. But also, I think a lot of people said that the grammar was correct and it was more or less factually correct. However, it was very workmanlike, and there were also no human quotations in there as well. So where there was an opportunity to add some, I guess, emotion or some perspective or analysis, it wasn't able to do that very effectively, which I think is very interesting. So it's workmanlike, I think, is the outcome that people sort of saw in it.
I think it brings us round to a point we made earlier on. It's not going to be able to dig out an exclusive story, is it? And there's been some great exclusives that have broken this year, and that's really what good journalism is and always has been about.
Yes.
Find those exclusives. And I think from a PR and marketing and brand sense, our exclusives need to be bringing that creativity, that thought, that imagination to stories that AI simply could never do.
In a way, it's actually been brilliant for journalism because it has taken things back to basics. Let's focus on great exclusives, amazing video, brilliant, funny headlines. Because there was a period of time when a lot of journalists were essentially writing for Facebook because Facebook was the only way that they could get the content in front of their audiences.
And that's when you got into the clickbait era.
Exactly, yeah. So the
Yeah.
clickbait era is over, I think, and everybody is now going back to, let's prove that we're experts on this topic. Let's show that this is an exclusive story. So yeah, I think in a way it's been good for journalists as well.
Yeah. I think there've been a few fairly highly publicised incidents of AI fails that have become PR fallouts in their own right. Have you got any favourites or any that you'd like to share over the last?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a great source for these oversights and mistakes that seem to reach a stage that's hard to believe. I'm thinking most recently of a newspaper that issued a obviously AI-generated written content, or an article, and the end of the piece finished with the prompt from the bot. So, would you like me to expand on this topic, add some more points to these to this discussion? Clearly, it hadn't been checked by one of the subbies and reached print. But I think the most egregious one for me was the Deloitte report. It's probably close to my heart because obviously I do quite a lot of reports on white papers day to day, but a lot of the references were wrong and quotations were fabricated as well. This reached the Australian government, who had commissioned the piece, and it obviously eventually led to a rather large partial refund and an apology from Deloitte. So that's probably the best example, I suppose, or the worst, however you want to see it.
So that's some interesting kind of PR fails there on the AI front from Tom. Have you got any kind of other insights around fails you want to share with us, Amy?
Well, I had a very interesting conversation with a few journalists last night who revealed some shocking AI fails. So I was told that there's one major publisher who decided to get their in-house AI to start writing news articles. So it has actually started happening. But unfortunately, this AI started pulling news articles word for word from a rival publisher, including the bylines. So bylines of journalists were appearing on the rival website. So it was just this epic PR fail.
Wow, yeah, that is an epic fail, almost of This Morning show. But I don't know if you watched that, but there was some good AI fails in there.
I was also told about another epic fail when journalists are researching for stories. They're typing topics into Google, questions into Google, and Google AI mode is providing this one paragraph of information. But journalists weren't checking the information and taking it as verbatim. But obviously, we know that AI isn't accurate. It can't really be trusted and it doesn't know everything. So facts that were completely incorrect and inaccurate were ending up in news articles and newspapers. So there has been lots of fails so far.
This is the thing as well. It's when you're reaching that point, it's like, are these, and I think I mentioned it earlier, are these efficiency gains actually worth it? So are we actually saving time here? Because have you just shifted the problem further along the process?
Got to check it anyway.
Exactly. So whether we'll ever reach a point where these things are completely foolproof is obviously open to debate. But again, that just kind of speaks to the inherent problems, I think, that are baked into these models that we still are having to sort of reckon with at the moment.
I think we could also see publishers creating their own AI models that incorporate their own copy and their own, library of data. And I can see a future where all of the all-round news stories are written by AI from their in-house AI models. And on the websites, AI is padding out news articles. So it could make it quicker for journalists to write stories for the website. So you could do, a couple of paragraphs on the exclusive story that you've got and then ask AI to pad it out for you. So it would make things a lot quicker. So I think if there is a great future for AI if you're using it smartly and if you're being clever for research purposes and to save you time on admin.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's both a quality and a quantity issue, I think, for journalists, because yes, you've got to get your exclusives out, but you also, when you look at how many times news apps and websites are updated, it's a lot. Like it used to be back decades ago, the paper would come out once, maybe 2 editions if it was a big news day. Now it's like news is constantly up. Our hunger for news doesn't go away. And I check the maybe I shouldn't admit to it, the Daily Mail app far more times than I should. And it does need to constantly update, doesn't it, to keep us all fed with what's going on, all the news and gossip from around the world. So AI can help with that quantity issue.
Yes, absolutely. I think, most news websites are churning out, hundreds and hundreds of stories a day. And any sort of tool that they can use to make that more efficient and quicker will be really sought after. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's lots of publishers working on in-house AI models and just ways of being quicker and they need to be the fastest, basically. So they need to be having the best exclusives and being the quickest to the breaking news. So yeah,
which in some respects has always been the case, right? So it's just the methods that we're going about it is changing slightly. Mm-hmm. So it's weird. I feel like we're in this situation where everything is changing, but then everything's also staying the same in some respects. We just have this elephant in the room, for want of a better term, that we're all having to sort of negotiate, I suppose. It's asked fundamental questions, but I guess the job at the end of the day has stayed the same in many respects.
I think it's kind of that thing, isn't it? You don't want to cut corners, and people don't want a product or a company that cuts corners. But at the same time, if you are smart and clever, you can cut those corners really efficiently.
Yeah.
It's kind of that thing you don't want to admit to.
But I suppose AI is a tool like any other, and if you use the tool wisely, it can be really helpful. And if you don't, it can be a great disadvantage to your life. So I think we've talked an awful lot around the impact of AI on journalism, but we all work together in a PR agency, and we're kind of, how I often see it, the intermediary between brand and journalism here. What do you think it means for us as a PR agency, and the advice we give to clients and how we work with journalists?
So I think there's two aspects here for me. So in-house, so for us as an agency, I think it's a matter of not losing our love of the craft. If we start to rely on these tools too much, we will ultimately become less effective at what we do day to day. The only way you get better at things is by doing them yourself. I'm a firm believer in that, and I don't believe that these tools will ever be able to sort of take away the on-hands experience that you receive when you're working in an agency. And I think for clients, what I would say is I would treat these outputs with a great degree of caution. As I mentioned earlier, I think it may be a sort of self-defeating exercise to sort of rely on AI-generated content too much, if at all. So I think there's a challenge here, because obviously there is a great efficiency question here. So whether we can reach a point where across the agency and working with clients we can become more efficient, that's obviously the ideal. But I think at the moment, as it stands, caution is the sort of order of the day. And
have you had clients ask, do you use AI in the production of content, and do they seem open to it? Or
yeah, so for me, the assumptions so far, or the sort of general feeling, has been quite negative. So one of the clients that I work with, they haven't trialed it themselves because they are very skeptical of how effective it can be, mainly because of the type of content they're working on. So it's quite value add, technical, deeper sort of thought leadership, which I think you could never really give over to an AI chatbot, at least with any degree of effectiveness. But what I would say as well, in terms of like new business, we've seen clients specifically request us not to use these bots because they've, presumably had bad experiences with them before. So it's interesting. We seem to be in a sort of world where everyone kind of recognises it as an opportunity, but also no one really likes AI, or apart from the tech giants.
I think we've got to be better at defining the opportunity, haven't we? Understanding where it's not an opportunity and where it can be.
Yes.
And I think there was a lot of hype. AI is coming. It's going to take all our jobs. But as I said, for a while, certainly from a media relations perspective, it can't do our jobs at the moment.
Yeah, maybe I'm like a fool here, but I tend to be more optimistic. I don't think it will replace everyone wholesale. And I think, as Amy alluded to earlier, the companies that do move over too quickly will soon find themselves in a difficult situation, particularly when they outsource a lot of what was sort of proprietary knowledge, I suppose, in-house knowledge that they relied on for many years. So, I don't want to sound like a Luddite, but caution for me.
I think it instantly erodes trust, doesn't it? If you're using AI but you haven't been transparent about it. You know, we're kind of cheating. We're cutting a corner and we haven't told you about it. And then if you're found out, you just look silly and you lose the trust of your audience. So I think at the moment, the big publishers who have come out and said, we will never use AI generated news content are the ones that are winning at the moment. And they're also the ones that are, you know, evolving. They're doing new things and they're capturing new audiences via video and
Substack.
podcasts. Substack is big at the moment as well, which is really kind of strange because you're taking your audience and you're sending them off elsewhere. So I find I never thought we'd see that happen, but here we are. So yeah, there's lots of new platforms emerging, and I think publishers are just more than ever becoming aware that they need to ensure that they're a brand. They're throwing parties, they're throwing events, there's ticketed events, podcast shows and gigs and road shows and all sorts that they've never done before.
Yeah.
I was just going to say on the trust point as well, I think Google's CEO acknowledging that we're in a bubble and it's likely to burst to some extent. I think that's quite telling, and it speaks to the hype, as you mentioned, Jane, around AI at the moment. There's a lot of money that's being invested in these platforms, and they're not necessarily delivering a return at the moment. So from our perspective, if we're relying too much on these tools that may not ever actually give us a return, we could find ourselves in a very difficult situation quite quickly. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it unfolds actually over the next year.
Well, I'm old enough, I perhaps shouldn't admit to this, but I'm old enough to remember the original .com bubble bursting and the ramifications that had across the world. So I'm approaching AI myself with a degree of optimism, interest and excitement.
Yes.
But like you say, a degree of caution. Are we overhyping? Are we overestimating what it can do at the moment? Are we ready for it?
Yeah, just on a more general point about crises, can we not have a crisis? We've had the .com bubble, the financial crash, COVID. It seems like
would you a break? Would you a good spell? Aren't we? I think we'd all agree with that. So just to sum it up, then, in a few words, your view of AI, the pros and cons.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I think pros, I'd very much focus on those high volume but low value tasks that can be automated without exposing a company too much. So, at the sharp end of things, when you're dealing with journalists, when you're dealing with other companies maybe, or the public, you want to make sure that there's as much human intervention as possible. I think that's probably the main advantage. So identifying those tasks where we can automate easily without risk. That's what I would say. And the cons, well, there's probably quite a few. I don't want to dwell on them too much. But as I say, I am probably a sort of foolish optimist. And I, like you, do see a future where these platforms and our industry will probably coexist quite well.
I think it's a fantastic tool if you're going to use it to work smarter. So use it for research purposes if you're going to verify that research is accurate and correct. Use it for admin purposes. It can write great invoices. It can write great contracts. Use it for that sort of thing if you're going to, read through, check it's correct. However, I don't think it's great for creative purposes. I think that's the area that really does require the human touch. And I don't think we should be relying on AI to be coming up with campaigns and, fantastic creative avenues.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you both very, very much.
Thanks, Jane.